Hi, folks. Welcome to Crisco's Corner. Hi, folks. Welcome back. And those of you that are new, welcome. I found this opinion piece on the Washington Examiner. I like their header. Washington Examiner, Restoring America. It's an opinion piece, and it's extremely, extremely well written. I'll tell you. Let's check it out. Everything the social justice crowd told us was a lie. And this is by Beckett Adams. So those of you that really appreciate this piece, send a little love to Beckett Adams. You'll see he's there. He's on Twitter, Facebook. And there's a crowd there. Everything the social justice crowd has said in the last 15 years has been a lie. The movement gained a foothold in American culture around 2008. That was the first year of Barack Obama. Riding a wave of popular reexaminations of race relations, political divisions, systematic disparities, it styled itself as an honorable call to right the wrongs of society, both historical and contemporaneous. Now, I used to be a Democrat years ago, a local elected official in the early 2000s for 8 years. And I remember in 2012 at a so-called, what he's called watch parties on election night when Barack Obama got reelected, I was sad beyond belief. Not because Romney would have been president, he's a scumbag anyway, but because I was sad for the future of our country. And a couple of people asked me, and they said, John, you don't look too happy. And I said, no, I am fearful for the future of my country. I had it in my gut back then that all this was going to happen. Maybe not exactly like this, but certainly the divisions. It's, let's read on. The last 3 weeks, however, has served as definitive proof that the benevolent emperor is a naked tyrant. The warriors for the oppressed are not so noble and selfless as they claim. Imagine that. Neither are they singularly motivated by the ideals of inclusivity, equity, and diversity. DEI is racism and prejudice on steroids. They are greedy, vicious, prejudiced, and hateful as the oppressors they accuse. It's called deflection when you accuse the people that you're against of doing something and you're doing the exact same thing. I believe that's called deflection. The social justice crowd has only ever cared about acquiring power and influence, creeping toward this goal via emotional blackmail, intimidation campaigns, and even occasional violence. Theirs is not a cause for justice, but for self-enrichment, a relentless, bloodless conquest for power and treasure. They simply disguise their self-interest in the language of justice and altruism, all the while plotting new ways to seize for themselves the privilege and power they deny others. Exactly right. That's one of the most well-written paragraphs I've seen in a long time. It truly is amazing to me. If you notice that a lot of the Harvard students were siding with Hamas and Palestine and the current conflict in the Middle East, and then they were exposed. Doxing, as they supposedly say. And many, many big corporations and law firms that saw that list made public announcements, we will not be hiring these people. And they freaked out. They thought it was wrong to be singled out. Well, they've been doxing people, getting people fired from their job, losing everything over some trivial comment for years. So now the sword is cutting the opposite way, and they don't like it. Well, you know what? Kiss my... Let's read on. Nothing has done so fine a job of laying bare this reality than Hamas's October 7th slaughter of 1,400 Israelis, mostly civilians, including children. Since that day of mass murder, social justice activists have flooded city streets and college campuses across the West, cheering war crimes and calling for the destruction of Israel. You see videos here on this website, where it shows some Jewish students locked in a library at a college for their safety. Meanwhile, There's hundreds of people banging and smashing on the door trying to get to them, and they're in there scared crapless, and I don't blame them. They chant, the high school kids I've seen chant this. Explicit calls for ethnic cleansing, including from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Yeah, from the river to the sea is where Israel is. They want it wiped off the face of the earth. That is ethnic cleansing. There's only one solution. Intifada revolution. We can't wait for the caliphate. These are the same morons that are queers for Palestine, that in these Islamic countries, if you're gay or trans, they will throw you off of buildings or worse. It's amazing to me that they could be this effing stupid. Maybe like he says, it's self-promotion. Me, 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 me. They probably display signs showing the Star of David in a wastebasket occupied by the caption, "Please keep the world clean." Can you imagine? This is not just a small percent of college students. This is a very large percent. And I hope they all get doxxed. I hope what happens to them in their personal as well as their careers and job seeking in the future that they've done to tens of thousands of other people and destroyed their lives. They tear down posters featuring the faces of Israeli adults and children held hostage by Hamas. Can you imagine putting up missing posters and then tearing them down? There's video after video after video. They use projectors to display messages such as "Glory to our martyrs" on school buildings. These are the same people who claim they are traumatized by violent rhetoric. These are the people who turn terms such as safe space and trigger warning into everyday cliches. These are the people who ruthlessly enforce diversity, equity, inclusive policies and ideology in the name of protecting marginalized people. They're left-wing academics, students, activists, and bureaucrats, and they proudly endorse violence and terror. They're having an effect, and they are. This is why I love watching the current Democrats just implode and destroy themselves. They use these people to get elected, not just to the presidency, but to Senate seats, congressional seats, local state governments, local governments. And they do it here, and I live in upstate New York, just 60 miles below Syracuse above the Pennsylvania line. Very far from New York City, but their reach is long. They're still around protesting against people that were murdered and children. Think about that for a minute. Think about that for a minute. Jews in New York City have been told to avoid certain areas for fear of targeted violence. What does that sound like? Is that like the Brown Church to you from years ago? Some Jewish schools in the United States closed on October 13th after Hamas leadership called for a day of rage. At America's institutions of higher learning, some Jewish students are going into hiding as their classmates hold vigils for the Palestinian martyrs. On October 7th, college administrators have been slow to condemn the pro-terrorist demonstrations that have descended on their campuses. Yeah, because they've been coddling these people. They created these people. They've created this monster. Because in a lot of ways, the administrators are monsters as well. Sit in their ivory towers, protected, can't be fired, making large salaries, causing students to go into debt for tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars so they can line their pockets, get great health care, great vacations, great retirement plans, all on the backs of these kids. And these kids side with them. It's those of you that know what Stockholm Syndrome is, it is one of the most glaring examples of Stockholm Syndrome I have ever seen. They're even slow to offer protections for Jewish students. The team that claims it cherishes inclusivity and diversity more than anything else has embraced Hamas and its mission to annihilate a marginalized group. They've effectively become accolades for Hamas. And they have. High school students chanting in San Francisco hallways, "From the river to the sea, Palestine shall be free." That is a saying that wipes out Israelis and Jews. It's incredible to me. And the students, I should say, are unchecked, from teachers, administrators, academics in these colleges. Yet these students, academics and activists, tell us they stand against violent language. They tell us certain rhetoric should be punished and even outlawed. You can go to jail in the UK, and there's been some memes. I think somebody posted a meme about an election, and the guy went to jail here in the U.S. That it's hate speech and that rhetoric, and you should go to jail. You should be doxxed and cast out of society. It's amazing to me. This sounds like the tactics of certain individuals. Can't use the word here because the algorithm will get screwed up. In a very large economic powerhouse in Europe in the 1930s, and you can figure out who that is. They tell us rhetoric is sometimes literal violence. Remember the sign, "Silence is violence." If you don't speak out, that's violence. It's insane. They tell us they hear racist dog whistles every time the right criticizes democratic governance. They hound private citizens for perceived microaggressions, including the wearing of offensive Halloween costume. They accuse the right of waging literal genocide against the LGBT community. They even browbeat the NFL's Washington Redskins, and my brother, rest his soul, was a devout Redskins fan. He's turning over in his grave. And Major League Baseball's Indians in the changing of names of the Commanders and the Guardians, respectively. It's amazing. Meanwhile, what they're saying, from the river to the sea, Palestine should be free. That's not a dog whistle. That's an outright admittance you want Jews in Israel wiped off the face of the earth. They call anyone who hints at disagreement a literal Nazi. Can't use the word because the algorithm will screw up this video. They invented an entire industry, and that's true, to comfort and coddle students. Meanwhile, setting them in a debt that will take them decades to pay while they line their pockets. I mean, it's unbelievable. Employees, activists, etc. will claim they've been traumatized by conservative rhetoric. Every time there's a conservative speaker on some of these campuses, they announce that there'll be counseling available for those who have been triggered. Meanwhile, you can march in the streets and call for the death of an entire race, and it's really okay. And people that are triggered by that, just toughen up. Too bad you don't like it. They endlessly accuse the right of promoting anti-Semitism and anti-Semitic tropes. Yeah, they call Trump an anti-Semite. His daughter is a converted Jew, and so his grandchildren are Jewish. You idiots. Gorging themselves on news and media commentary that alleges the same. MSNBC, CNN comes to mind, and countless websites. Given these stated values, how are they cheering actual war crimes, holding vigils for actual terrorists, and engaging in the most stridently anti-Semitic and fascistic behavior and rhetoric this side of World War II? When it comes to Jews, where are those safe spaces? The attic? What happened to all hate has no home here? In this house, we do not defend Jewish people from calls for their extermination. For the people who berated the country for the last 15 years about inclusion and diversity, the answer is clearly a resounding no. The Jews do not count. Jews' lives don't matter. It's amazing to me, the hypocrisy. It's on a scale that staggers the mind. The secret to understanding these contradictory positions is this. The social justice types don't actually oppose hateful language and dangerous rhetoric. They don't care about equity and inclusivity. They don't. Attempts to censor speech, dogpiling nobodies for even the most banal microaggression, physically intimidating ideological opponents, these are nothing more than exercises in raw power. Some pointed out some simple exertions of control. They are the methods by which they elbow out, shut down, eventually destroy altogether those with whom they disagree, and those whose destruction would provide them with a kind of more opportunities and privilege. The brown shirts used to do that at all the colleges in the 1930s in a certain country in Europe. Exact same tactics. It's amazing to me. And it's still, the major news networks, especially CNN and MSNBC, they just keep promoting it. It's amazing to me. It truly is. But in a way, I'm glad. I'm not glad that Jews, of course, died. That's a horrific thing. And I'm not glad that some Jews in the U.S. and around in Europe and around the world are put at risk. What I'm glad about is finally, these pieces of garbage have finally been exposed for what they really and truly are. To the left-wing social justice activists, Jews are just a subset of white oppressors. And it's both right and just to strip the white oppressor of his power and privilege by any means necessary. This is a stated goal of the social justice movement, as expressed in increasingly explicit terms over the years. True. The rallies in support of Hamas aren't surprising. Then when one understands the stated aims of the social justice movement, for the movement, Hamas presents yet another opportunity for the tearing down and marginalization of acceptability hated groups and the reassignment of its privilege to better and more deserving stewards. This is exactly what went on in the 1930s in Europe. Exactly the same tactics. And that's not by accident. The people on top that are pulling the strings think exactly the same as the individuals in 1930s Europe in a certain country. Everything the social justice crowd has told us about working for a more peaceable and inclusive tomorrow has been a lie. And nothing has revealed this so clearly as the spectacle of them standing shoulder to shoulder with a hyper-violent anti-Semitic death cult. I gotta give a round of applause to this writer. This is a well-written piece. And I usually don't do that as a rule. So anybody get a hold of the Washington Examiner and give Beckett Adams an email saying, well done, well done. It's true. These same morons are now up to debt for the next 20 years. While these people enrich themselves, it's incredible. I saw a poll the other day about free speech on college campuses, and they rated college campuses from 1 to 100. But I should say from 0 to 100. 0 being no free speech at all, and 100% being, of course, just free speech in general as per the Constitution. You know what Harvard got? You saw some of their 5s and 8s and 10s and 15s. Harvard, one of the most prestigious schools in the world, and one of the oldest in the U.S., got a score of free speech. These so-called social justice warrior types, they got a rating out of 100 of 0.00. How is that even possible? And there they are. It's incredible to me. Absolutely incredible. I'm glad they're finally being exposed. But what I hope doesn't happen is that in a few months, it's all forgotten. In the, what I call normal Democrats, the few that are left, will just keep voting Democrat. I'm hoping that these social justice type people, crowds, splits the Democrat Party. Biden and the Democrats have painted themselves into a corner. They've let this monster grow. They've let this Frankenstein monster they created. Now they can't control it. And I hope and pray that the Democrat Party, that this is their final doom. What do you think? Until the next time, God bless, goodbye, and good luck.